Providence Courtroom, February 2018. Helen Fernandez stands in handcuffs, facing Judge Frank Caprio. The charge reads simple: shoplifting $8.47 worth of bread and peanut butter from Stop and Shop. Security footage doesn't lie. She concealed items under her winter coat, walked straight past the registers. The prosecutor recommends a $500 fine plus community service. Standard procedure, open and shut. But Caprio pauses, studying the crumpled receipt in the evidence bag. He notices 3 kids in the back row, the oldest maybe 12, holding that same receipt like it's a lifeline. Helen won't look up. Her hands shake. The public defender whispers she has no priors, clean record, works 2 jobs. Caprio asks the question that changes everything. "Mrs. Fernandez, why didn't you just ask for help?" Silence, then tears. What he discovers in the next 40 seconds rewrites his understanding of justice, poverty, and the mathematics of survival. The cameras are rolling. 2 million people are about to watch. Helen Fernandez was invisible before this moment. Single mother, 34 years old, 3 kids under 13, living in Providence on $1,400 a month. She worked mornings at Dunkin' Donuts, evenings stocking shelves at CVS. Her rent ate $1,100 of that income. What remained, $300, had to cover food, utilities, gas, school supplies. Everything else. Her oldest daughter, Sophia, watched the younger 2 every afternoon until Helen got home around 10. Public records showed a clean life, no arrests, no tickets, taxes paid on time. She saved every grocery receipt, rubber-banded them in a kitchen drawer, tracked every dollar like it was borrowed. Stop and Shop was her usual store. She knew the layout, knew which bread went day-old first, knew the generic brands by heart. On February 4th, she walked in after her CVS shift at 6:47 p.m. Her bank account showed $12.33 until Friday's paycheck. Being poor means calculating in real time whether your kids eat tomorrow. But something happened that morning that broke her system completely. Sophia woke up that morning with a fever, 102.3 degrees. Helen ran the numbers in her head while her daughter lay shivering. Urgent care copay was $75, or she could wait and risk an ER visit at $200. She took Sophia to urgent care. Strep throat, the doctor said. The prescription for amoxicillin cost $28.50 with insurance at the CVS pharmacy where Helen worked. Her employee discount didn't stack with insurance. She'd already checked. After paying for the medication, her account balance read $12.33. Now the math turned cruel. Bread cost $3.49. Peanut butter cost $4.98. Together, $8.47. That left $3.86. But she also needed milk at $3.29, eggs at $2.99, lunch meat at $4.50. The numbers didn't work. They never worked. During her evening shift stocking shelves at CVS, she calculated and recalculated, panic rising with each aisle. She left at 6:30 p.m. and drove to the Stop and Shop she knew by heart. Inside, under fluorescent lights, she held the cheaper bread in both hands, weighing it like evidence. The store security footage would later show her standing there for 7 minutes. Desperation doesn't announce itself. It just quietly rewrites your rules. She made a decision in those 40 minutes that would put her in front of 2 million people. February 11th, 2018. Helen stood in Providence Municipal Court for her arraignment. Judge Frank Caprio, 78 years old, the son of Italian immigrants, had built his reputation on compassion. His YouTube channel, Court in Providence, had 400,000 subscribers. People loved watching him pay parking tickets for struggling families, dismissed charges with fatherly lectures about responsibility. The cameras were always rolling. The production team edited the footage into viral moments. Defendants crying, Caprio dispensing wisdom, feel-good justice. Some videos hit 1 million views. But Helen's case was different. This wasn't a parking meter someone forgot to feed. This was theft, security footage, criminal charge. She stood at the bench, public defender beside her, kids sitting in the gallery behind her. Caprio noticed immediately. Her worn winter coat, the kids' mismatched clothes, the oldest daughter, Sophia, clutching a crumpled receipt in her hands. Sophia had brought her mother's evidence bag receipt to court like proof of something larger. Caprio asked his standard questions. Helen answered in whispers. The prosecutor stated the facts without emotion. Concealment, exit without payment, security footage clear. The receipt sat on the clerk's desk. $8.47. Caprio picked it up, studied it. Justice is supposed to be blind. But numbers tell stories judges can't ignore. Then Caprio asked the one question that broke her silence. "Mrs. Fernandez, what were you stealing?" Caprio's voice was gentle, not accusatory. Helen listed the items. Bread, peanut butter. "For your kids' breakfast?" She nodded. "Why these items specifically?" Silence stretched across the courtroom, then tears. And then Sophia stood up in the gallery, holding up a prescription bottle. "Judge, I was sick." The courtroom froze. The cameras captured 40 seconds of complete silence. Helen's voice cracked as she explained. Her daughter's fever that morning, the urgent care visit, the medication that emptied her account, the kids who still needed breakfast. Caprio asked to see bank statements, the medication receipt, her work schedule. The public defender produced the documents. 2 jobs. $1,400 monthly income. Rent $1,100. The math became visible to everyone in the room. $300 left for food, utilities, gas, everything else that keeps a family alive. Caprio held the grocery receipt next to the medication receipt. The timestamps matched. CVS Pharmacy at 5:47 p.m., Stop and Shop at 6:47 p.m. 1 hour between saving her daughter and stealing breakfast. The prosecutor watched but said nothing. The law was clear. Theft had occurred. The law doesn't care about context, but judges are human first. What Caprio did next violated every normal courtroom procedure. Caprio called a 15-minute recess, unprecedented for a shoplifting case. In his chambers, he pulled up Rhode Island statutes: theft under $100, first offense, mitigating circumstances. He called colleague judges, asked about precedent, discretion, alternative sentencing options. The public defender followed him, explaining that Helen technically qualified for a diversion program, but the program required a $500 enrollment fee. The same problem again. She didn't have $500. That's why she stole $8.47. Caprio reviewed the security footage on his computer. Helen's 40-minute store visit. The way she picked up items, studied price tags, put them back, picked up cheaper versions. The visible distress in her movements. The cameras had caught her putting items back twice before finally concealing them under her coat. This wasn't an experienced shoplifter. This was a desperate person making the worst decision of her life. The courtroom production team debated in hushed voices. Viral video potential versus legal precedent. The producer noted this could be their biggest video yet, or a massive controversy. Caprio's handwritten notes sat on his desk. Justice versus mercy, underlined 3 times. The legal system offered no clean solution. Every option required money she didn't have. Every punishment would make her situation worse. Sometimes the right answer isn't in the law books. Caprio returned to the courtroom with a plan that broke his own rules. The courtroom had filled during the recess. Word had spread somehow. A mother, 3 kids, $8.47. A local news crew slipped in through the back. Caprio took the bench and announced his decision. Guilty verdict, but suspended sentence. No fine. Instead, 40 hours of community service. Helen's face showed relief, then immediate panic. She already worked 70 hours a week. When would she serve 40 more? The public defender started to object, but before he could speak, a man stood up in the gallery. "Judge, I'll pay her fine and cover the service hours." The stranger identified himself as a local business owner. He'd been in court for his own parking ticket, stayed to watch her case. He wanted to help. A second person stood. "I'll match that donation." Then a third, a fourth, a fifth. The courtroom erupted. People pulling out wallets, approaching the clerk's desk, offering cash. The cameras captured everything. The spontaneous response, the clerk scrambling to find something to collect donations in, $20 bills and 50s piling up. Caprio sat motionless, watching. The community was responding in real time, donations offered on the spot, justice rewriting itself without precedent or statute. Compassion is contagious when people see themselves in the defendant. The cameras rolled. The moment went viral before anyone left the courthouse. But what happened after the cameras stopped changed Helen's life in ways nobody predicted. The video uploaded to YouTube on February 12, 2018. Judge Caprio dismisses charges against struggling mom. It hit 100,000 views in 6 hours. The algorithm picked it up, pushed it to recommended feeds. By day 2, 1 million views. The comments exploded into civil war. Critics argued theft was theft, that Caprio had set a dangerous precedent, that he was rewarding criminal behavior. Supporters argued context mattered, that the system was broken, that the judge had shown basic humanity. Media coverage spread from local news to regional broadcasts to national segments. Helen's identity leaked through the comments section. People found her Facebook page. Messages flooded in. Job offers, donation pledges, hate mail accusing her of gaming the system, interview requests from news outlets. Stop and Shop's corporate office issued a careful statement. "We support Judge Caprio's decision and the community's response." The store manager who'd called the police received death threats. He quit 2 weeks later. Helen's phone showed 400 missed calls by the time she got home that night. The battery died. She didn't charge it for 3 days. The video hit 2.3 million views by the end of the week. Going viral means losing control of your own story. The attention brought help, thousands of dollars in donations, job offers, support from strangers across the country. But it also brought scrutiny nobody expected. A local reporter dug deeper. Not for a hit piece, for the full story. She interviewed Helen at length, reviewing bank statements, work schedules, the timeline of February 4th. The details that emerged painted a fuller picture. Helen's husband had left 18 months earlier. No child support, no contact. She'd applied for assistance, SNAP benefits, food stamps, the safety net everyone assumes exists. Application denied. Her monthly income of $1,400 was exactly $47 over the eligibility threshold. $47. That tiny gap meant no food stamps, no child care assistance, no medical support beyond basic insurance. The system designed to help people failed at the exact margin where help was needed most. Economists call it the benefits cliff. Earn slightly more, lose all assistance, end up functionally poorer than before. Helen's case became a textbook example. Policy researchers cited her story in papers about poverty traps. Politicians referenced the case in debates about benefits reform. News outlets created charts showing the benefits cliff, marking Helen's income with a red arrow pointing at the gap. The receipt, that crumpled $8.47 piece of paper, became a symbol. Media framed it as evidence of a broken system, proof that America punishes people for working. The cruelest trap is making people choose between earning and surviving. But the real aftermath wasn't political. It was deeply, quietly personal. Donations reached $47,000 in 3 weeks. A GoFundMe campaign, verified by the news station, crowdfunded by strangers who saw themselves or their mothers or their daughters in Helen's story. She quit her night job at CVS. For the first time in 3 years, she was home when her kids went to bed. A local non-profit offered her a position, administrative work, $42,000 annually. Full benefits included. Sophia's follow-up appointment showed the strep had cleared completely. Her grades improved. She started talking about college, about studying law, about cases like her mother's. Helen began advocacy work, speaking at city council meetings about the benefits cliff, testifying at state hearings about reform. She framed the original grocery receipt and hung it in her new apartment. Larger now, $1,400 rent, but affordable on her new salary. The media attention faded after 6 weeks. Views plateaued. Comments slowed to a trickle. Helen's life stabilized into something resembling normal. Mom home for dinner, help with homework, a routine without panic. Judge Caprio followed up privately, checking in every few months. No cameras, just a phone call to see how the kids were doing. The discovery was complete. A viral moment had sparked systemic conversation. A personal transformation had occurred away from the spotlight. The story people shared wasn't the story she lived after. 6 months later, fall 2018, Judge Caprio received a letter from the Rhode Island Judges Association. Not a commendation, a complaint. Multiple anonymous colleagues had filed concerns that he'd set a dangerous precedent, undermined the rule of law, favored media attention over judicial responsibility. The letter cited bias, selective enforcement, accusations that he was more interested in YouTube views than consistent justice. Caprio's response was simple. Discretion is the essence of judging, mercy is a component of justice, and the law explicitly allows flexibility for first-time offenders in minor cases. But the damage spread. Other judges began citing his case, some as a model of compassionate judging, others as a cautionary tale of activist overreach. Defendants in other courtrooms referenced Helen's case, expecting similar treatment. Caprio's office received 50 letters a week, people requesting help, clemency, special consideration. Some had legitimate need. Many were opportunistic, looking for a viral moment of their own. The burden increased. His staff felt overwhelmed. The camera crew debated new filming policies, worried about ethical concerns and perverse incentives. A stack of unanswered letters grew on Caprio's desk. He couldn't help them all. His reputation divided cleanly. Half saw a hero, half saw an activist judge who'd stepped beyond his role. Doing the right thing once means people expect it forever. Meanwhile, Helen's life continued beyond the camera's memory. 2 years later, February 2020, Helen's life had settled into mostly ordinary rhythms. The kids were growing. Sophia was 14 now, excelling in school, already researching pre-law programs at state universities. Her middle child thrived in sports. The youngest had adjusted to stability. Regular meals, mom home at night, a childhood without constant financial terror. Helen's non-profit job continued, salary up to $48,000 with annual raises, health insurance that actually covered things, retirement matching she could finally afford to use. She did occasional speaking engagements, paid talks about the benefits cliff, and lived poverty experience. The framed receipt still hung in her apartment. Visitors always asked about it. The Stop and Shop incident felt distant now, almost like it had happened to someone else in another lifetime. Her ex-husband reappeared briefly that winter, seeking contact with the kids. Helen declined through her lawyer. Child support was finally established by court order. $600 monthly, enforced through wage garnishment. The video remained online, views climbing to 5.7 million, comments still trickling in. New viewers discovered the story regularly, assumed it had just happened, expressed outrage or support to a years-old moment. Helen stopped checking notifications. The moral shift was complete. From victim to survivor to advocate to just person. A woman with a job and kids and a life. Eventually, your worst moment becomes just one moment. But the receipt held meaning nobody initially understood. The receipt represented more than one meal, bread and peanut butter. 4 to 5 days of kids' breakfast, the cheapest protein available per dollar. Helen had made the choice under impossible pressure. Feed her children versus follow the law, biological instinct versus social contract. Thousands of parents face that same choice every single day. Invisible decisions. Survival math performed in grocery store aisles while fluorescent lights hum overhead. Helen's case showed the pattern clearly. The working poor are the most vulnerable. The benefits cliff effects are brutal, and the gap between help and no help can be measured in $47. In 2019, Rhode Island adjusted its SNAP eligibility threshold. A small change, a $47 buffer zone added to the income limit. The adjustment made 2,400 families newly eligible for food assistance. The policy change directly cited viral attention to cases like Helen's. Other states took notice. 12 jurisdictions adjusted their benefits calculations between 2019 and 2020, referencing the conversation sparked by an $8.47 theft. The receipt became a symbol used in testimony before legislative committees, printed in policy papers, held up in advocacy campaigns. Caprio's decision had created ripple effects far beyond one family. It generated sustained attention to systemic failures. The receipt's transformation was complete, from evidence of a crime to evidence for systemic change. Sometimes breaking a small rule exposes a broken big system. The final meaning came from what the receipt never showed. The story ends where it began, but the meaning has transformed completely. That grocery receipt, originally evidence of theft, later a symbol of poverty, finally an artifact of policy change, represents something larger than any single transaction. Most viewers remember the dollar amount, $8.47, more clearly than they remember Helen Fernandez's name. What people missed, that receipt was the last in a series. Helen had been making impossible choices for months, calculating which bills to pay, which meals to skip, which child's need took priority. The receipts she saved in her kitchen drawer told the real story, a woman barely holding on, doing math that shouldn't be necessary in the richest country on earth. The one that got caught became the one that mattered. Judge Caprio's legacy remains complicated. One compassionate decision, millions of views, mixed reviews from judicial peers who saw either wisdom or recklessness. Helen's legacy is simpler. A normal life resumed, kids growing up, the story receding into past tense. The systemic legacy continues. Small reforms, ongoing conversations, continued policy references. The impossible part was never the theft. It was the context that made theft feel rational, the arithmetic that made crime seem like the only solution. You think this is about one mom and one judge? It's about every calculation happening right now in someone's kitchen. Justice that ignores math is just arithmetic with a gavel. The receipt exists still, faded now in its frame, the printed numbers barely visible under glass. $8.47 still legible if you look close. 3 kids got breakfast that week. The system became slightly less broken. One woman's life was reclaimed from the edge. But thousands more receipts are being hidden under coats tonight in grocery stores across America, uncaught and uncounted, held by parents doing the same desperate math Helen did that February evening. They're calculating co-pays against food budgets, rent against utilities, which child's need can wait another week. They're standing in fluorescent-lit aisles, weighing bread in their hands like evidence, feeling the weight of decisions that shouldn't have to be made. Most won't get caught. Some will. Almost none will face a Judge Caprio with cameras rolling and a community ready to respond. The receipt in Helen's apartment reflects whoever looks at it. A mirror for society's gaps, a reminder of who our systems fail to see. The glass reflects the viewer's face back at them. What it means now, until the math changes, until the system stops punishing people for working, until $47 doesn't determine whether children eat, the receipts will keep piling up. Somewhere tonight, a mother is standing in a store, making a calculation, hoping she doesn't get caught.